Hello everyone and welcome to Vlog with me. It's the 6th of Jan and I think 7 videos in and my EQ finally caught up with me. I've realized that I've never introduced myself or even explained who I am, and yeah, so you would be forgiven if you were thinking to yourself, who is this person and why should I care? So I thought, let me do a my story vlog. That being said, it might be a bit of a journey down memory lane, so I have got a cup of personality, aka caffeine, aka coffee. Yeah, let's strap in, let's get comfortable, and hope you enjoy the story. So I have to take you back a few decades. So full disclosure, I don't know why I said full disclosure. The one thing that I can honestly say I have been enjoying is the process of getting older. So I am 44, turning 45 later this year, and it's been an absolutely exciting journey. I think stepping into my 40s, there's been a lot of moments where I've allowed myself permission to speak my mind. Not in a disrespectful manner, but speaking my mind based on years of experience in certain areas. And along with that, there's that sense of liberation that if I speak my mind, some people might hear, some people won't. And I'm actually okay with that. In the past, I used to care quite a lot. I'm not saying I'm at a point in my life where I don't care at all, because there is still consideration. You have to be considerate of how your behavior, how your words impact others. So as best as I can actually apply an element of self-awareness, my intention is to interact with people in a caring manner, have the conversations that I have with people, to have those conversations be encouraging. We all have a very loud negative internal voice. So I really do not see myself about to pile on. So that's me. So my personal philosophy is that with every interaction, with every word that you leave with somebody, that you leave that person in a better state of being. Even more so if the discussion that you have had, if the person walks away, and even for me, I love conversations where I walk away, where I've just learned something new, where I've walked away with an aha moment, where a learning nugget dropped. So those for me are the conversations that I absolutely love, that I seek, that I yearn for. So for those who have already interacted with me, and those who hopefully in the future I will have an interaction with, you will find and pick up, I do not do small talk. I absolutely loathe small talk. If I can go into a deep dive topic right after I say hi to you, then I would do that. I'm that person. So as a result, networking events, not my strongest suit. So that's my philosophy. And I'm by no means perfect. And I'm mindful that there may be times where I say something or where I do something that inadvertently may have hurt someone's feelings. But it's never something that I go out and do intentionally, or I don't have that conscious thought that I'm going to say something that's going to hurt someone. So I think it's always important that, and obviously one needs to be mindful who you do this with, who you say this to, because you can't just allow everyone to speak into your life. You can't just allow everyone to just vomit their thoughts all over you, and vice versa. So you need to be quite discerning who you have these kind of interactions with, because there also has to be an element and a level of rapport and trust. And I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but I think a lot where that really applies is especially in the realm of coaching and mentoring. To be a coach, and it doesn't matter what type of coach you call yourself, or what type of coach, or what type of field or area you specialize in, but the premise is the same. Somebody decided to be vulnerable enough to allow you in. Someone decided to give you that permission, that sacred permission to speak into their life. Because the psychological contract is that if I, as a coach, have been given the permission to speak into my client's life, that is a position of power. And I always throw this line and joke in with some conversations that I have, but it always fits. So, it's like my little black dress that I can just pull out in any conversation. But with that power comes great responsibility. So treat it with care. And I place a lot of value and currency on when somebody gives me permission to speak into their lives. So you want to be careful with your words. You also need to be willing to keep quiet and allow that person to process what you are saying, internalize, reflect, and let the conversation flow again. So that's my coaching technique, which is not part of the story that I actually want to delve into. But as I share more, I think that kind of approach, and it's an approach I try my best to apply just in all facets of my life, especially when I'm conversing with people. So my story. I have to take you back a few decades, when I was at school. So, grew up in a small town. Both my parents are trained teachers. They are trained educators. I think it's safe to say that education was more than just a profession for them. And they might differ from me, but I would describe it as their calling, their vocation. think something about educators, they're natural storytellers. So in terms of my dad, aside from the fact that he's a trained educator or teacher, he is also a pastor, or the way the vernacular of our church is reverend. So yes, I'm a PK, but as a PK, pastor's kid, I do think on a subconscious level, I've learned the art of storytelling from my dad, from my mom, because in both of those professions, vocations, there needs to be that type of talent and capability. So yes, being at school, observing all of these things, I think, unbeknownst to me, it has really influenced how I see the world, influenced how I see people, influenced how I have interacted with people. And the earliest memory that I have of a teaching element of me, and my parents have always been the type of parents that would encourage reading. So we have got reams of books at home, and I mean, ranging from encyclopedias, I don't know who can still remember those, so to my younger generation viewers, encyclopedias are printed forms of Google, perhaps Wikipedia, but I think encyclopedias are more verified. So so they've always been books, always books at the house. They've always been books at home. And now I'm really giving my age away, even though I did say what my age was in the beginning. But Reader's Digests, do they still print those though? Like, I actually enjoyed reading those. I loved the short stories in the Reader's Digests. So yeah, just literature was in abundance in our household, and to this day still is. And I remember I gathered some of our neighborhood kids outside on our yeah, from my accent, I am from South Africa, born and bred. And so there are a few colloquialisms, a few vernacular terms or phrases that we use that's very deliciously South African. So sometimes if I do lose myself and I forget that there might not potentially be international viewers watching this video, I might throw a term out there. I will try my best when I edit the videos to throw in a definition or two, if I don't add that to my actual narration on the video. So all of that to say that I gathered some of the neighborhood kids on our stoop. If I have to use an more internationally recognized term, I'm thinking veranda, but that is also not the word. But I digress. I will make sure that in this video description, I will add a few definitions of the terms I'm using. So please bear with me. I'm gonna talk about a stoop. Um, a word just popped in my head: porch. So if you are US based, the equivalent of a stoep in South Africa is a porch. And gosh, I'm actually just smiling as I'm thinking about this, and I can't believe I'm divulging this, but I gathered our neighborhood kids, and the ages aged, let's say 5, 6, teaching them about the female reproductive system. That was my earliest memory of teaching, educating. Mind you, they did look at me and stare at me, very wide-eyed. I can't say bushy-tailed, because I think those wide eyes, it leaned more to the metaphor of a deer caught in headlights. That is how best I can describe that situation. But that was my earliest memory of me being in teacher mode. By the time I got to high school, because now in high school you have to start thinking about your career, right? Because I was quite fortunate enough that my parents afforded me the opportunity to study at university, complete some tertiary studies, but when you're in high school, you have to decide. You have to make your pick of subjects that will actually set you up for tertiary studies. And you normally have to make this decision by grade 9. So by grade 10, you locked in, you locked and loaded until you complete your high school career. And I think at that point in time, I was fairly adamant. I did not want to go into teaching. I can't exactly say what event occurred that made me so adamant about not ever becoming a teacher. However, that was my thought process. So as a result, grade 10, the subject selection I made was very much science driven or science directed. And the career vision or the career aspiration that motivated that selection was that I wanted to go into medicine. The the deeper lying reason behind wanting to do medicine is that growing up, I've always loved people. I've always cared about people, cared about their well-being, and I've always wanted to help people. And I think back then, knowing what I knew then, that was sort of the obvious career choice, if that was what my passion was. I completed school, enrolled for a science undergraduate, and the reason for that was I may have goofed off a bit in grade 11, which was the very worst year to do that, because that really is a huge deciding factor when considerations are made for medical school selections. So, long story short, the goofing off counted against me, and I was recommended to do a generic science degree. And at that stage, my two majors were human physiology and psychology. I completed my undergraduate degree, and I quite liked the psychology part, or the psychology major I quite enjoyed, but not enough to want to do a postgraduate degree in that area. A friend then told me about a bridging program at the university at that point in time, that allows you to complete your 3 undergrad years in industrial psychology. So it's a selection of certain modules of year 1 and year 2, and then you do all of your 3rd year modules or majors. I took to that bridging program like a fish to water. I never thought that I would. And what really interested me were the topics or the subjects on things like ergonomics, consumer behavior, abnormal behavior, because every psychology student is into that, because now you are able to diagnose weird and wonderful behaviors. So I may have diagnosed myself a bit as well, so that's a different confessional. So that was quite I loved the program, so much so that I graduated, so then went on to doing my honors in or my postgraduate in industrial psychology. I think the other topic or subject that also really intrigued me was organizational psychology. I think what I loved about it was how dynamic the topic was, how the theories that we learned in that topic, the principles and all of that, was so dynamic, and I found it very interesting how human behavior adapts to an organizational environment. And I think even in that field, in conjunction with the science degree that I did, I also developed a systems thinking discipline and approach. So anything I approach, any topic I try and dissect, there's always an element of systems thinking that goes behind that, because I need to understand the whole, and I need to understand how different elements of that whole fit into each other. How do they function separately, and then how do they actually function together? So that synergy between those two, the synergy between all of those elements. And as I'm saying that, another memory just popped up. So something very cool about my dad is whenever an appliance or gadget, let me use gadget as an umbrella term, is purchased, my dad would have this habit of disassembling the thing, and the parts would be laid out, and then he assembles it. And I think, again, maybe not consciously, but I think the seed that was planted for me then was that systems thinking, was understanding that here you've got this thing. It's made up of different parts. But in order to know how this thing operates, you need to understand and be familiar with the different parts. And you need to understand and be familiar how each small part performs and functions. So that when this thing breaks down at some point, you can almost fairly, or you can almost with fair certainty be able to pinpoint where the issue might be. And sometimes the issue might just be with one part or element of this whole, or it could be a combination of two or three. But because you took the time to disassemble and understand, it makes it easier to actually go in and troubleshoot. Now, there's a lesson behind that, and the lesson is that learning is so important. And we sometimes get very impatient with ourselves when we're trying to learn something new, because sometimes the learning curve can be quite steep. And other times, not so much, because you are then able to draw from your frame of reference of other experiences. And that's what you would call reflexive competency. So that reflexive competency helps you to pull out from your bag of tricks of past experiences and actually apply it into a different context. So learning and understanding the whole or the system, it does take time. It takes time to understand the different parts. But with that, and I've actually been seeing quite a number of memes floating about that speaks to the same principle, that in order to excel, in order to really catapult into the next level or next realm of thinking of competence, you actually have to slow down first. And then, moving forward, it will help you to speed up. So you have to slow down to speed up. And it's a tried and true, and not anecdote, but a tried and true axiom. Cool. Let me just make sure I have covered childhood. I was definitely not going to take you guys as far back as birth. That's unnecessary detail there. So that's childhood, that is school, that is my student days. I'm obviously leaving out a number of juicy details, but that's not relevant for this vlog. Just need to take a sip of coffee. So, funnily enough, switching over to industrial psychology, and I don't think it was such a conscious decision, but I found myself stepping into the world of learning and development, which is, guess what, a form of teaching, a form of a form of educating within the corporate space. And again, took to that field like a fish to water. And it was amazing because at that point in time, South Africa, there was a bit of a change with our education system, and we adopted a system called outcomes-based education. What that did, and this is my opinion on it, my observation on it, what it ended up doing was that it actually pulled the two worlds closer to one another. The schooling system and the corporate environment where employees learn and train. And it pulled the two worlds together to take on a form of vocational learning and occupational learning. So it was really about learning with the end in mind. So understanding what the outcome is, and you put the blocks or the building blocks in place through key learnings to get to the outcome. With that, the South African Qualifications Authority also came into being. There was this entire national qualifications framework that was put in place. Not to bore you with all those details, but just to say that was what was happening in the macro world when I stepped into my profession. And I stepped into my profession as a skills development consultant. So back then, learning and development was less known, and was more referred to as skills development. And that then evolved into training and development, and then into learning and development, and on and on and on. So that was my introduction to the world of corporate learning. And I think, and I can't remember the exact moment, but it hit me like a ton of bricks that I was actually very adamant growing up that I do not want to be a teacher. And just look where I am now. I'm building an entire profession around that. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I think the main highlights of that career was being able to design learning content. And I never knew and realized my love for writing. But that's kind of where it came into play. My love for teaching, again, that's where all of those things came into play. And I mean, there's obviously a lot of backstory I'm not adding to this that will help you to understand certain decisions that I've made. But suffice it to say, I quickly realized that the world of skills development, the world of learning and development, but just the world of people development within the context of an organization is where my vocation lies. I've never seen it as a chosen career. I've never seen it as a chosen profession. I've quickly realized that it's a calling, it's a vocation. And the reason why I knew it was a calling is that even though, yes, there were learning curves there, there were certain things that I really needed to unpack and tackle and learn and understand. But at the same time, it was not a lot of cognitive load for me. And I enjoyed it. And I also enjoyed the outcomes and the results that I got from that. And I'm not talking about the financial benefit of choosing a career like that. But I think most importantly, it was being able to see how my interaction based on my expertise actually helped people. How my interaction with individuals helped switch on a light bulb. And you can almost physically see it happening. Because when you are doing a training program or a learning program with a group of people, so you're facilitating, right? And I see it each and every time when I'm in a room with a group of individuals. They do not walk out looking and sounding the same than when they walked in there. You can actually see a shift. You see the eyes brightening. It's almost as if you can hear the coggles in the brain, or the cogs in the brain churning. Gosh, I can't even compare it to being an adrenaline rush, because I'm sure a lot of avid sports people will say, oh no, it's chalk and cheese. But for a nerd, a geek like me, jeepers, it is the most amazing rush ever. And the one thing that also always stands out for me, and that's whenever I get to a point where I find a bit of a lull in my career, where I'm just thinking to myself, why did I choose people development? Why did I choose L&D? Why did I go into this field? I remind myself of moments back way then where I used to train adults. And when I say adults, what I mean is, yeah, I was a 20-some-odd young woman, have not lived a lot of life. And I step into a room with men, first of all, from different cultural backgrounds. And in the area where I grew up and worked, the majority, the majority of ethnicity would be Black Africans, and mixed or colored South Africans. That is also another video. I'm not going to go into too much detail of the whole concept of colored. I'm pretty sure there are people who have covered that topic and kind of expanded on what it means. It's more than just an ethnicity. It's a sense of being. It's a sense of culture. So again, not the purpose of this video, but just to sketch the context for you. Along with those ethnicities and cultures, there are very specific things that one needs to be mindful of. And it goes along with being able to show respect. The way you conduct yourself, of course, but how you approach the individual, how you address the individual. There are a lot of cultural nuances. And again, being in my 20s, I did not have reflexive competence, or I did not have a toolbox to draw from. And the first technique or skill I learned was that when I step into a room, and I do it to this day, when I step into a room, I don't step into a room making the assumption that I'm the expert. I don't step into a room making the assumption that I can't learn anything from the individuals in that room. And so that is how I would position myself, and that is how I earned respect. That is how I earned trust. And those skills I also embed in my coaching practice. So that's, I've got many stories like that, but that is how my early career was shaped. Lots of humble pie. Lots of stupid decisions I made. But I'm glad I made them, because in hindsight, I would never have learned to improve, and I never would have learned how to behave differently. So throughout my career, and it's going to sound strange when I say this, but I have been blessed with 3 retrenchment or layoff experiences. And I say blessed because we all know the saying, hindsight is 20/20. And what that hindsight has taught me is that if I did not go through those layoffs, I would not have had the privilege to experience working and engaging people across a myriad of industry verticals. I wouldn't have. So looking back, those experiences were meant to happen to get me to the point where I am today. Of course, in that moment, being laid off, in that moment, having the conversation and being told, sorry, your role is being made redundant, it's not a fun conversation to have. But you have got one of 2 choices to make then. You either crawl into a corner and allow life just to crush you, or you use that experience as a stepping stone to reach higher. You use that experience to challenge yourself to do something different, to explore something new. So if I didn't have those layoff experiences, I most probably would have still been in some of those jobs 15 years down the line. I mean, I've been in the world of people development, in all shapes and forms of what that would look like and what that means, just shy of 20 years. And the industries that I've had touch points in, I never would have been able to do. So hence me saying a blessing. And that's the journey that has actually helped me getting to where I am today. And my career, my chosen profession, my chosen vocation, I think for me as an individual, has also been satisfying in the sense that I consider myself to be both a creative as well as an academic. I love reading up on just random factoids. So yes, there's my creative side as well as the academic side. So I love reading, I love researching new stuff. I love testing the status quo. And I think in the world and in the realm of people development, and especially people within the container of an organization, and when I say organization, I mean any business of any size, right? the fact of the matter is, you've got a human being that is wired a certain way. And that for me is what always interests me. How do you tap into that secret source to help that individual optimize their performance? How can they go from strength to strength in their career, in their chosen profession, within a specific business or within a specific organization? So that excites me. I think for other people it might just bore them to tears. For some odd reason, that is what just revs my engine. And so also, because I've had touch points in different industry verticals, I've picked up skills and I've picked up additional capabilities and tools I can put in my toolkit. And a lot of those skills and capabilities have actually helped me zoom out and look at an individual both within the realm of the business, but also outside of. Because we all know, as human beings, you can't say to someone, leave your personal life outside when you step through these doors. You can't. That's not how we are wired. Wherever you go, you bring your mess with you. And so where I'm at today, as a businesswoman, as a consultant, specializing in anything people, and I have to just narrow that down a bit. When I say specializing in anything people, it's people behavior. I will leave talent acquisition or recruitment. I will leave employee relations, so that's dealing with disciplinaries and kind of the punitive processes. I will leave that to my esteemed colleagues who specializes in that or who specialize in those elements. I'm more around the people practices that build people, that develop people, that help show people their potential and what they can achieve. That's the realm I like to play in. So, in a nutshell, that is my story. As I've mentioned, I've left out a few juicy tidbits, but that wasn't the purpose for this vlog. But it was really just to give you a bit of a backstory to the person behind IL People Solutions. IL, of course, is me, Inga Lof. And I decided on IL because, first of all, Inga Lof is unique. I checked. There are all of 2 Inga Lofs on the entire LinkedIn network. I'm one of those 2, which I'm very proud to say. And I find myself in good company because the gentleman, and I'm pretty sure the pronunciation of the name and surname would be different to mine, is an engineer. So very good company I find myself in. I kind of want to latch onto that brand because I think in most respects, when I was still in corporate, I would have very kooky ideas. Like I said, I love to test the status quo. I love to push the boundaries where I can. Sometimes they fail, sometimes they don't. But the times when they do work out, I'm like, man, that was cool. That was that was a rush, you know. And I sometimes do make the mistake of not stopping and reflecting and celebrating the success. So so I do have a bit of a kink in my armor in terms of, and this is something just me being vulnerable. I do have an extensive history of burnout. I've been diagnosed with depression back in 2012. But those are things that I've been actively managing. And I've reframed those things to be my biggest and strongest strength. Because the lessons I've learned from my depression, the lessons I've learned from my burnout, is that you have to have empathy no matter what. At the end of the day, when you are dealing with human beings, you have to understand their story. You have to understand their frame of reference that they exist in. Because that frame of reference and that story is what informs the way they behave, is what informs the way they communicate, the way they think. Every element of people experience is something you have to have empathy for. Because otherwise, you can throw anything at them, whether it is a training program, whether it is a coaching opportunity for them, whether it's a mentoring opportunity for them. If you do not understand and if you are not empathetic of that person's story, of their frame of reference, you are just flushing money down the toilet. So I think with me stepping out of corporate, this is actually allowing me and affording me the opportunity to really focus and hone in on those aspects, where I can actually partner with a company to draw out the best versions of the employees. Because when you're in corporate, it's very difficult, right? And there are exceptions, don't get me wrong. But in the general sense, you are bogged down by what we call BAU, business as usual activities. It's needed, right? There's compliance aspects you need to be mindful of. There's reporting you need to do. There's meetings you have to attend, and over and above that, as a people experience specialist, that's my new way of referring to human resource specialists, because we're not human resources, we're people, we're individuals. So when you step outside of that realm, so as a people experience specialist, when you're within the confines of a business, within the confines of an organizational system, truth of the matter is this: your loyalty belongs to whoever pays your salary. Now, I know that there are very mixed feelings towards people in HR out there for that reason. A lot of people think that HR or people in HR are just paper pushers, that people in HR don't care. They are not looking out for your best interest at heart. Trust me. Now that I'm on the other side, I can tell you that they do care. They do. And sometimes decisions are made, and sometimes things are being said that fly against the very grain of that person. Because there's a reason why they chose that field. There's a reason why they chose that career. When you within the framework of a business of any size, your hands are tied. You can only push the envelope to a certain extent. So you cannot fully and completely be I don't want to say neutral. You cannot be fully impartial, even though we would like to think that we are. But truth be told, there's a mandate and there's an instruction that you have to follow and execute on. So with me stepping out of that realm and stepping into a space of my own consultancy, my mission is to fully and wholly live out that impartiality that I wish I could when I was in corporate. So these vlogs and topics that I'll be sharing going forward in the future, those are going to be topics and concepts and thoughts and opinions that might not always be popular. And that is okay. But if those topics that I touch on make you sit up and think, then I've done my job. If those topics help you to decide to do things differently, then I've done my job. So, why should you care about Ingelof or IL People Solutions Consulting? And there's a face on your screen that drops a vlog every now and again. I've been laid off thrice. I've been in the field of people development and people experience management just shy of 20 years. I've worked both within the public sector, at a vocational college, and the majority of my career I've been in the private sector. Industry verticals that I've worked in ranges from FMCG, wholesale retail, banking, ICT, food and beverage, I've been around, but in a good way. So trust me when I say, yes, I will push the envelope, but it's because I care. Because I truly and honestly want to see people transform into the best versions of themselves. Thank you for vlogging with me. Chat soon.